I wake up in a hospital bed after 12 days in a coma. My parents abandoned me there and vanished without a trace. Then my grandfather arrived with my $1 million inheritance. 5 days later, my family came back. The nurse looked them dead in the eye and said just one sentence, and my entire family froze in shock. My name is Hazel Montgomery. I am 31 years old and I work as a forensic accountant in New York. If you end up liking this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to Calm Senior Stories, but only if you genuinely enjoy it. Also drop a comment with your age and where you are watching from. I always love seeing that. Now let me take you back to the moment I opened my eyes. The first thing I process is the rhythmic mechanical hiss of a ventilator. Next is the sharp stinging scent of medical iodine. The room is quiet. Too quiet. I blink against the harsh fluorescent lights and try to turn my head. The visitor chairs in the corner are empty. There are no coats draped over the back. There are no wilted flowers on the windowsill. Just stark white walls and the steady beep of a heart monitor. A nurse walks in. Her badge reads Sarah. She has tired eyes, but her hands are steady and gentle. She checks the IV line taped to my bruised hand and offers me a plastic cup of ice water. The cold condensation beads against my fingertips as I take a slow, painful sip. My collarbone aches with a dull, deep throb that radiates down my chest. Where are my parents, I ask. My voice sounds like gravel. Richard and Brenda. Did they go get coffee? Sarah stops. She sets the water cup down on the rolling tray. She looks at the empty chairs and then back to me. Let me get your chart, she says quietly. She pulls a metal clipboard from the foot of my bed. When she speaks, her voice is strictly professional, but her gaze carries a heavy pity. Hazel, you were brought in 12 days ago after a severe car crash on the interstate. You required emergency surgery to reconstruct your collarbone and stabilize internal bleeding. Your parents were notified, and they came in that first night. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. Okay, I say. So where are they now? Sarah flips a page on the clipboard. They stayed for about an hour during your surgery. Then your father requested the financial waiver forms from administration. They signed a document legally refusing all financial and medical responsibility for your care. Then they left. They did not leave a contact number. The words hang in the sterile air, refusing responsibility. My mind tries to map the logic, but there is none. I am a forensic accountant. I track missing assets and hidden debts for a living. I am used to numbers making sense. This does not make sense. I stare at the foot of the bed. What about my sister, I ask. Victoria. Was she here? Sarah nods slowly. Yes, your sister was with them. Actually, before they left the building, your sister demanded that the hospital surrender your personal belongings. Specifically, she wanted the keys to your Manhattan apartment. Administration denied the request because you were incapacitated. I lean my head back against the thin hospital pillow. The physical pain in my chest is nothing compared to the cold realization settling in my stomach. My family did not just abandon me to die. They left me here and immediately tried to take my home, and I am about to find out exactly why. Still bound to my hospital bed, I need a lifeline to the outside world. Nurse Sarah brings me a standard mobile phone from the staff break room. My fingers tremble as I press the illuminated buttons. I dial the number from memory. It is the direct line to Gary, the building superintendent of my Manhattan apartment complex. I hold the plastic device to my ear. I hear the static hum of the phone line clicking into place, followed by the hollow rings. Gary picks up on the fourth ring. His voice is gruff, carrying the baseline irritation of a man who spends his days fixing leaky radiators. He barks a standard greeting. Gary, it is Hazel, I say. My voice is thin but steady. Hazel Montgomery from Unit 4B. There is a sharp clatter on the other end of the line, like someone dropping a metal clipboard onto a desk. The silence stretches for 3 long seconds. Hazel, he says. His tone shifts from irritated to deeply unsettled. They told me you were not waking up. Who told you that, Gary? Your sister, Victoria. Her and that husband of hers, Julian. Gary clears his throat, sounding out of his depth. They showed up 5 days ago. They had a signed letter from your father saying you were being transferred to a long-term hospice facility down in Florida. They said the family needed to clear out your unit to cover the out-of-pocket medical expenses. I tried to call the hospital to verify, but they said your file was restricted by next of kin. My heart rate monitor ticks a fraction faster. The rhythmic beep fills the sterile room. What exactly are they clearing out, Gary? Everything, Hazel. They rented a box truck. They have been carrying out your furniture, your electronics, and your designer coats. I saw Julian hauling out your fireproof document safe yesterday morning. They told the doorman they were putting it all in storage. But Hazel, I saw them handing a dining chair to a guy off the street for a wad of cash. They are selling your things. I close my eyes. I tell Gary to freeze my keycard access and to call the police if they set foot in the lobby again. He agrees instantly, apologizing over and over. I end the call and set the phone on the rolling tray. My sister Victoria and her husband Julian are not destitute. They live in a sprawling penthouse in Tribeca. Julian runs a tech startup that specializes in vague data solutions. He wears custom Italian suits and talks entirely in corporate buzzwords. Victoria spends her days curating a flawless aesthetic for her social media followers. They are the golden couple of our family. My parents Richard and Brenda worship the ground they walk on. I am the quiet forensic accountant who wears plain blazers and works 50-hour weeks. I am the background character in their glamorous narrative. So why is the golden couple treating my apartment like a liquidation sale? Why are they pawning my furniture for street cash? The analytical side of my brain takes over. As a forensic accountant, I track discrepancies. I look for the missing numbers, the hidden offshore accounts, the quiet frauds. When people act out of character, there is always a financial motive. Victoria and Julian are desperate. They are moving fast. They are banking on the fact that I will never walk through my front door again, and that realization triggers a physical reaction. A cold sweat breaks across my forehead. My mind races back to the night of the crash. It was a Tuesday. I was driving downhill on a winding stretch of the interstate just past the county line. The rain was slick and heavy, washing out the painted road markers. I approached a steep curve. I took my foot off the accelerator and pressed the brake pedal. I remember the exact sensation. I expect resistance. I expect the heavy hydraulic grip of the brake pads catching the rotors. Instead, I feel a sickening hollow snap. The pedal sinks straight to the floorboards with zero friction. It feels like stepping into a void. I pump the pedal twice more. Nothing. The car gains speed on the downhill slope. The guardrail rushes toward my windshield. I twist the steering wheel hard to the right, aiming for a patch of wet grass. The tires hydroplane. The world spins into a chaotic blur of shattered glass tearing metal and a deafening crunch that shatters my collarbone. Then silence. That hollow snap under my foot was not a worn-out brake pad. It was not a rusted fluid line. A mechanical failure groans and grinds before it gives out. This was instantaneous. This was deliberate. An hour later, my suspicion is dragged into the harsh light of day. There is a heavy knock on my door. A New York State trooper walks into my room. His name tag reads Miller. He holds his uniform hat in his hands and looks uncomfortable standing in the sterile clinical space. He introduces himself and asks how I am holding up. I tell him I am awake, and that is all that matters. He pulls a small spiral notepad from his chest pocket. He flips through the pages. The paper rustles in the quiet room. Ms. Montgomery, he begins. His voice is careful and measured. We towed your vehicle to the impound lot after the paramedics extracted you. Standard procedure for an accident with critical injuries. Our mechanics run a routine diagnostic just to rule out manufacturer defects. He stops. He looks up from his notepad and meets my eyes. I assume you are going to tell me my brakes failed, I say. Miller shifts his weight. The leather of his duty belt creaks. Your brakes did fail, Miss Montgomery, but not from wear and tear. The mechanic found that your primary brake fluid line was severed. It was a clean cut. There was no fraying on the rubber housing. The damage was caused by a heavy-duty wire cutter. Someone crawled under your vehicle and snipped the line. The oxygen in the room seems to evaporate. I stare at the trooper. Are you telling me someone tried to kill me? We are opening a formal criminal investigation, he says. I need you to think very carefully. Who has access to your vehicle? Who holds a grudge against you? Who benefits if you do not survive that crash? I do not need to think carefully. The answers are already aligning in my head like rows on a ledger. I live in a secure building with an underground parking garage. The general public cannot just walk in off the street. You need a programmed digital key fob to open the security gate. I only have 2 key fobs. I keep one on my keyring. 3 weeks ago, I gave my spare fob to my sister Victoria. She asked to store a few of Julian's vintage wine crates in my designated storage unit down in the garage. She said their penthouse cellar was undergoing renovations. I handed her the plastic fob over a cup of coffee. Victoria and Julian are the only people on Earth with unfettered access to my car. They did this. My own flesh and blood severed my brake line and then waited for the police to call with the tragic news. When I did not die on impact, they panicked. They showed up at the hospital, signed my life away, and immediately rushed to my apartment to liquidate my assets before I could wake up. But why? A few pieces of used furniture and a document safe are not worth a murder charge. The math is incomplete. There is a hidden variable driving this desperation. Julian and Victoria are drowning in a debt so deep they were willing to spill my blood to climb out of it. I thank Officer Miller and tell him I will cooperate fully with his investigation. I ask him to keep this conversation quiet for now. I tell him I need a few days to gather my own records. He nods, sensing that I know more than I am saying. He leaves his card on my tray table and exits the room. I am alone again with the rhythmic beep of the monitor. My collarbone throbs, but my mind is icy and clear. My parents left me to die. My sister tried to accelerate the process. I am a ghost to them, but ghosts have a funny way of coming back to haunt the people who buried them. Just as I reach for the burner phone to check my bank balances, the heavy wooden door of my room swings open again. I expect Nurse Sarah. I expect another doctor with another chart. Instead, an elderly man steps across the threshold. He walks with a polished mahogany cane. He wears a tailored 3-piece suit that belongs in a boardroom. I recognize the sharp cut of his jaw and the cold intelligence in his eyes immediately. It is my grandfather Harrison. He disowned my father a decade ago. We have not spoken in 5 years, and he is not holding a bouquet of flowers. He is holding a thick leather legal folder. On the 14th day of my confinement, the heavy oak door of my hospital room glides open. It is not my parents returning with a sudden burst of conscience. It is my grandfather Harrison. He is 82 years old, a retired shipping magnate who built an empire on the Atlantic coast. He walks with a polished mahogany cane, but his spine is straight, and his posture demands immediate respect. I have not seen him since he formally disowned my father Richard 10 years ago. Harrison steps into the clinical sterile space. He wears a tailored charcoal suit that looks entirely out of place among the rolling trays and plastic IV bags. He pulls a chair to the side of my bed. The room goes still. The only sound is the rhythmic metallic ticking of his vintage gold pocket watch echoing against the hard tile floor. It is a slow, deliberate sound. "Hello, Hazel," he says. His voice is rich and gravelly, showing no trace of the frailty you might expect from a man in his 80s. "Grandpa," I manage to whisper. My throat is still raw from the ventilator tube. "How did you know I was here?" "I know everything that happens in this city," he replies. He rests both hands on the silver head of his cane. "I keep a close eye on the people who share my last name, especially the ones who disgrace it." I is talking about my father. Richard Montgomery was supposed to inherit the shipping business. Instead, he spent his 30s hemorrhaging company funds to fuel a gambling addiction. He and my mother Brenda practically lived in Atlantic City casinos until Harrison finally audited the books, cut them off, and banished them from the family fortune. That was the day Richard started treating me like a ghost. I was not the golden child. I chose to study accounting instead of attending socialite galas. Harrison reaches inside his suit jacket and pulls out a thick leather legal folder. He lays it gently over my lap, right across the thin hospital blanket. "Your father and your sister think they are clever," Harrison says. He leans forward and his pale blue eyes lock onto mine. "They think my age makes me blind. But I hired private investigators to track their movements the moment I heard about your accident. I know they walked out of this hospital and signed a waiver refusing your care. I know Julian is selling your belongings, and I know exactly why." I grip the edge of the blanket. "Tell me, Harrison opens the leather folder. Inside is a stack of printed financial dossiers. As a forensic accountant, I instantly recognize the formatting. These are deep background asset checks. Julian is ruined, Harrison states flatly. His tech startup is a hollow shell. He burned through his venture capital 2 years ago and kept the lights on by taking out illicit private loans. Your parents co-signed those loans using their own home as collateral to keep up appearances. Between the startup collapse and your parents' recent losing streaks, they are over $2 million in debt. The creditors are demanding immediate repayment. The pieces snap together in my mind. The wire cutters, the severed brake line, the rush to empty my apartment. But the math still feels short. My furniture will not cover $2 million, I say. My apartment is nice, but I do not own it. I rent. Selling my designer coats on the street might buy them a week. Harrison nods. He respects the analytical way my brain works. You are correct. Your personal belongings are just pocket change to cover their immediate living expenses. The real prize is your estate. You are 31 years old, single, and you have no children. By law, your parents are your direct next of kin. If you succumb to your injuries, Richard inherits your bank accounts, your retirement funds, and your life insurance policy. He pauses, letting the gravity of the legal structure settle in the room. Then he taps the mahogany cane against the floor. But that is just phase 1, Hazel. If they inherit your estate, they position themselves perfectly for phase 2. Me. Harrison explains their ultimate strategy. He has a sprawling $4.5 million trust fund. He specifically wrote Richard and Victoria out of his will 10 years ago. But if I die, my parents intend to use my life insurance payout to hire a team of ruthless litigators. They plan to challenge Harrison's mental competency in court. They want to argue that the old man is suffering from dementia and that his previous will should be invalidated. If they win that lawsuit, they seize the entire shipping fortune and clear their debts overnight. They needed you out of the picture, Harrison says. His voice drops to a harsh whisper. You are the only competent heir left. You are the firewall standing between them and my money. A cold rage begins to simmer in my chest. The pain in my collarbone fades into the background. My family did not just view me as a footnote. They viewed me as a roadblock. They orchestrated my death to steal my future and then use it to rob an 82-year-old man. So how do we stop them, I ask? Harrison smiles. It is a sharp, predatory expression. We do not just stop them, Hazel. We destroy them. He gestures toward the doorway. 2 men in crisp navy suits step into the hospital room. They carry matching leather briefcases. They are Harrison's private attorneys, representing one of the most feared corporate law firms in Manhattan. I am not leaving my legacy to chance, Harrison declares. And I am certainly not leaving you defenseless. I drafted these documents 3 days ago. One of the attorneys opens his briefcase and produces a gold fountain pen. He hands it to Harrison. The old man signs the top page of the dossier, then hands the pen to me. Right here in the intensive care unit, Harrison legally transfers his entire $4.5 million trust directly into my name. The documents make me the sole executor and primary beneficiary effective immediately. There are no probate waiting periods. There are no loopholes. The ink dries, and I am instantly placed in total control of a multi-million-dollar empire. By signing this, Harrison explains you form an impenetrable legal wall. Richard and Victoria are permanently frozen out. Even if they challenge my competency, they now have to fight you to get the money. And I know you, Hazel. You are the only person in this family who actually understands how to fight a financial war. I sign my name on this dotted line. My signature is slightly shaky from the physical trauma, but the intent behind it is made of iron. The attorney notarizes the document right on my tray table. The heavy stamp echoes in the small room. In a matter of 20 minutes, the entire dynamic of the conflict shifts. I am no longer a helpless victim lying in a hospital bed waiting for the police to prove a murder charge. I am a millionaire. I possess the resources to hire the best security, the best investigators, and the best lawyers in New York State. My parents and my sister thought they were playing a brilliant game of chess. They have no idea I just bought the board. Harrison dismisses the attorneys. They nod respectfully and exit into the hallway. The old man sits back in his chair looking satisfied. They are going to panic, Harrison says. When the private lenders start breaking down Julian's door, they will look for another quick payout. You need to protect your immediate assets, Hazel. If they stole your keys, they might have stolen your digital footprint too. His warning strikes a nerve. I look down at my hands. As a forensic accountant, I know that physical theft is always preceded by digital probing. If Julian is as desperate as Harrison claims, he would not just stop at selling my dining chairs. He would target my credit. He would target my bank accounts. I need a laptop, I tell Harrison. My voice is no longer a fragile whisper. It is a command. I need a secure wireless connection, and I need to log into my cloud backup. My apartment runs on a smart home security system. If Julian has been in my unit for a week, the system recorded every single conversation he had. Harrison reaches into his jacket pocket again. He pulls out a sleek silver smartphone and slides it across the table. My security team is bringing a laptop in 10 minutes, he says. Start digging. I power on the device. My family tried to bury me, but they forgot that I make my living by unearthing the things people try to hide. And I am about to follow their digital trail straight into the dark. The private security team arrives within 20 minutes. Two broad-shouldered men in dark suits take up positions outside my door, while a third enters the room carrying a sleek black laptop. Grandpa Harrison nods to the man. The technician sets the computer on my tray table and hands me the power adapter. Harrison tells me he will handle the legal filings from his estate office upstate and promises to return when the trap is fully set. He leaves me alone with the machine. My hospital bed transforms from a place of physical recovery into a digital war room. My ribs ache fiercely as I adjust the pillows behind my back. I ignore the throbbing sensation. Physical pain is temporary, but financial ruin leaves a permanent scar. I boot up the computer and connect to the secure encrypted network Harrison provided. The soft chime of the login notification rings out through the quiet room. It is a pleasant, welcoming sound that sharply contrasts with the dark task ahead of me. As a forensic accountant, untangling webs of deceit is my specialty. I spend my days tracing hidden offshore accounts and uncovering corporate embezzlement schemes. I know how people try to hide their tracks. I also know they always leave a footprint. I navigate to the cloud backup server, tied to my Manhattan apartment. Living alone in the city prompted me to install a highly integrated smart home ecosystem last year. The setup includes motion sensors, automated lighting, and voice-activated hubs scattered across the living space. Julian and Victoria are arrogant. They assume because they unplugged the physical cameras and packed up my electronics, the recording stopped. They do not understand that my system pushes every command, every motion trigger, and every voice prompt directly to a remote server in real time. I access the administrative dashboard. My eyes scan the raw data logs. I see the exact timestamp when my sister first swiped her borrowed keycard to enter the lobby. I track the motion sensors lighting up across my floor plan. They started in the bedroom, moving systematically through the closets. Then I spot an anomaly. The smart hub, located on my kitchen counter, registered a series of audio files. The status tag next to them reads deleted. Someone manually wiped the local hard drive. They failed to realize the cloud server archives all erased content for 30 days. I click the restore button. The progress bar crawls across the screen. I plug a pair of sterile hospital headphones into the audio jack. I press play on the first restored file. It was recorded exactly 2 days after my car crashed into the guardrail. The audio is crisp. I hear the distinctive sound of packing tape ripping off a dispenser. Then Julian speaks. His voice carries a nervous, frantic energy. He is laughing, but it sounds hollow and strained. "We need to move faster," Julian says on the recording. "The broker says he can list this place as a luxury sublet by Friday if the floor plan is empty. We just need the security deposit up front to hold off the private lender." Victoria sighs. Her tone is cold and irritated. "Relax, Julian. Nobody is coming back here. You heard the doctors. The swelling in her brain is not going down. We just have to clear this junk out before the hospital calls with the bad news. Once she is officially gone, we file the paperwork for the estate and everything else is covered. Just box up the crystal glasses and stop pacing." I sit frozen. The clinical chill of the hospital room suddenly feels suffocating. My sister is standing in my kitchen, wrapping my belongings in newspaper and casually discussing my impending death. She is annoyed by her husband's anxiety, but entirely unfazed by my tragedy. They are actively betting on my demise. They view my flatlining heart monitor as their winning lottery ticket. The recording ends with the sound of another cardboard box sliding across the hardwood floor. I close the audio player. A heavy silence settles over me. I expected greed. I expected betrayal. But hearing the sheer callousness in her voice flips a switch inside my mind. Any lingering doubt or familial loyalty evaporates. I am staring at the digital reflection of two predators. My fingers fly across the keyboard. The adrenaline masks the pain in my shattered collarbone. If they are bold enough to sell my furniture, they are bold enough to dig deeper. I open a new browser tab and navigate to my primary banking portal. I bypass the two-factor authentication by linking the verification codes to my secure burner phone. The main dashboard loads. The checking and savings balances remain untouched. For a brief second, I feel a wave of relief. Then my professional instincts kick in. Criminals rarely drain liquid accounts first because cash transfers trigger immediate fraud alerts. Instead, they leverage existing credit. I pull my comprehensive credit report from the 3 major bureaus. I scroll past my established mortgages and standard credit cards. Near the bottom of the page in the recent inquiries section, a glaring red flag catches my attention. Someone submitted an application for a high-yield personal line of credit 3 days ago. The inquiry originated from a boutique lending firm based in Delaware. I click the linked document expanding the details. My heart hammers against my ribs. A new account was successfully opened under my name. The approved limit is $100,000. I pull the digital copy of the contract. Scrolling to the final page, I stare at the signature line. Someone carefully forged my handwriting. The strokes are hesitant but close enough to pass a superficial glance. I check the disbursement history. The entire $100,000 balance was withdrawn yesterday morning. The funds were wired to an untraceable holding account. The scale of their crime just multiplied. They are not waiting for me to expire so they can claim an inheritance. They are actively draining my identity while my body lies broken in a hospital bed. They stole my keys, invaded my sanctuary, and hijacked my financial future to pay off their violent creditors. Julian and Victoria are committing federal identity theft and wire fraud. I download every piece of evidence. The smart home audio files, the credit inquiries, the forged signature document, and the wire transfer receipts all go into an encrypted folder on my desktop. I label the folder with a single keystroke. I am building a cage made of their own digital footprints. I lean back against the pillows, breathing heavily. I need to contact Grandpa Harrison and his legal team to freeze the fraudulent account before the money vanishes offshore forever. I reach for my phone to dial his number. Before my fingers can press the screen, a sharp knock interrupts my focus. The door pushes open. The private security guard steps into the room. He looks tense. He holds a radio transceiver in his left hand. Miss Montgomery, he says, keeping his voice low. We have a situation downstairs. The lobby desk just radioed up. I close the laptop screen. What is happening? Your family just walked through the main entrance, the guard replies. Your parents and your sister. They are demanding to see the attending physician. They are carrying legal paperwork, and they are asking the staff for updates on your end-of-life care. They are taking the elevator up to this floor right now. My pulse races. The people who severed my brake line and stole my identity are currently riding the elevator to come watch me die. They expect to find a silent room and a tragic ending. Instead, they are about to walk into a trap they never saw coming. When the private security guard warned me of their approach, I did not panic. I calculated. If my family found me awake and coherent, they would pivot their strategy. They would play the role of the grieving concerned relatives, weeping tears of relief, while secretly plotting their next financial maneuver. I refused to give them the opportunity to perform. I told the guards to initiate a relocation protocol. Harrison had already prepared for this exact scenario. His men moved efficiently. They unhooked my monitor, disconnected my secondary IV, and transferred me to a secure transport chair. We took the service elevator hidden behind the cafeteria, bypassing the main lobby entirely. They whisked me up to the top floor of the hospital into a restricted VIP recovery wing, reserved for diplomats and high-profile donors. My original room on the third floor was stripped bare in a matter of minutes. The nurses changed the bed sheets and wiped down the tray tables. By the time my parents and my sister walked through the sliding glass doors of the intensive care unit, they found nothing but an empty mattress and a freshly sanitized floor. The hospital administration, acting on the legal authority of the newly signed trust, placed a strict privacy hold on my medical file. For 3 agonizing days, my family scrambled. They demanded answers from the front desk, but the clerks cited federal privacy laws and turned them away. They were flying blind. They knew I was no longer in that bed, but they did not know if I was dead alive or transferred to a county morgue. Now it is day 17 of my hospitalization. The waiting game is over. I am sitting upright in a plush motorized bed in my secure suite. The room smells of fresh linen and expensive floral arrangements sent by Harrison's associates. My collarbone still radiates a dull ache, but my mind is sharper than it has been in years. The security technician linked my laptop directly to the closed-circuit surveillance cameras monitoring the third-floor nurses' station. I am wearing sterile headphones watching the feed in high definition. The elevator doors on the monitor slide open. My parents and my sister step out into the hallway. I study them the way a forensic accountant studies a fraudulent tax return. I look for the inconsistencies. I look for the tells. My mother, Brenda, leads the charge. She wears a tailored black dress and a string of authentic pearls. She looks like a woman attending a high society wake. The sharp, arrogant click of her designer heels echoes across the linoleum floor. Brenda has always treated grief as a social inconvenience and poverty as a contagious disease. She is playing the part of the tragic mother, but her posture is too rigid. Her jaw is clenched tight. My father, Richard, walks beside her. He wears a charcoal suit that fits a little too snugly around his waist. He rubs the back of his neck with his right hand. It is a nervous tic he developed during his worst losing streaks at the blackjack tables. Richard is sweating. He knows the offshore lenders are circling Julian, and he knows his own house is on the line. Victoria trails a few steps behind them. My older sister holds a crocodile skin handbag and types frantically on her smartphone. She does not look up at the hospital room numbers. She looks entirely bored by the grim surroundings. She views this hospital visit as a tedious administrative errand. They march straight up to the main desk. Nurse Sarah is standing behind the high counter sorting through a stack of patient charts. She looks up as the trio approaches. I lean closer to my laptop screen and increase the audio volume. The microphone above the desk picks up their voices with crystal clarity. "Excuse me," Brenda says. Her tone drips with condescension. "We are the Montgomery family. We have been getting the runaround from your administrative staff for 3 days. We need to speak with the chief medical officer immediately." Sarah sets her pen down. She folds her hands, resting them on the edge of the counter. "How can I help you, Mrs. Montgomery?" Richard steps forward and slaps a thick manila folder onto the desk. "We are here to finalize the end-of-life protocols for my daughter Hazel. We have the forms ready for the attending physician to sign. Furthermore, we need the hospital to release the death certificate or the transfer papers so we can begin liquidating her personal assets. Her medical debts are becoming a terrible burden on this family, and we need to handle her estate." I stare at the screen. My own father just asked for my death certificate as casually as asking for a parking validation. They are trying to bulldoze the nursing staff into handing over the legal keys to my life. Victoria finally looks up from her phone. "Just tell us where you moved her," Victoria demands. "We know she is not in her original room. If she is in a vegetative state, we have a private hospice facility lined up. We just need her signature stamp and her personal effects." They are relentless. They want the money, and they want it today. Nurse Sarah does not flinch. She does not page a doctor. She does not consult a computer screen. She simply looks my mother dead in the eye. Her expression is a masterclass in professional disdain. "Hazel is not a ward of the state, Mrs. Montgomery," Sarah says. Her voice is calm, level, and razor sharp. She is not in a vegetative state, and she is certainly not being transferred to a hospice facility to be liquidated. Brenda narrows her eyes. What are you talking about? We are her next of kin. We have the legal authority to manage her care. Sarah shakes her head slowly. You forfeited that authority the night you signed the financial waiver and walked out of this building. Hazel was discharged from this unit 3 days ago. She was placed directly into the care of her private legal trust. Richard scoffs, waving his hand dismissively. Hazel does not have a private trust. She is a mid-level accountant. Stop wasting our time and call the director. She does have a trust, Mr. Montgomery, Sarah replies. It is a fully executed legal entity funded with $4.5 million. And her grandfather, Harrison Montgomery, is the primary benefactor. The silence that follows is profound. It is not just quiet. It is a suffocating heavy vacuum that sucks the air straight out of their lungs. I watch the physical reaction unfold on the screen. It is a glorious, terrifying spectacle. The color drains from my mother's face, leaving her pale and drawn. Her hand trembles as she reaches up to clutch her pearls. Richard staggers back a half step. His knees literally buckle for a fraction of a second as the reality of the situation crashes into him. Victoria drops her smartphone. The expensive device hits the linoleum floor with a sharp crack. She does not even reach down to pick it up. They freeze in a state of unadulterated shock. The narrative they spent weeks crafting just shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. They thought they were hunting a wounded deer. They just realized they walked into the den of a predator. If I am alive, their inheritance is gone. If Harrison gave me the $4.5 million, their plan to sue the old man for his fortune is entirely ruined. I am the firewall, and I am backed by millions. The shock only lasts for 10 seconds. I watch it curdle into raw, naked desperation. Richard grabs the edge of the counter. His knuckles turn white. Where is she, he demands. His voice cracks, shedding all of its polished arrogance. Where did Harrison take her? Sarah picks up her pen and returns to her paperwork. That information is strictly confidential. Have a good afternoon. Richard looks like he is going to reach across the desk, but Brenda grabs his arm. She pulls him back. Her eyes are wide with panic. They realize they have caused a scene in a public space. They turn and practically sprint toward the elevator, leaving the manila folder sitting abandoned on the counter. I switch the camera feed to the ground floor parking garage. I track their movements as they burst out of the sliding doors. Richard is yelling, pointing his finger at Julian, who is waiting by their luxury sedan. Julian runs his hands over his face, looking like a man who just read his own obituary. The offshore lenders are not going to wait. The debts are due. The stolen $100,000 is a drop in an ocean of liability. Victoria does not get into the car. She paces furiously across the concrete pavement. She picks up her cracked phone and dials a number. I zoom in on her face. She is not calling a financial planner. Her eyes are dark and calculating. She is backed into a corner, and cornered animals do not surrender. They bite. If they cannot inherit my estate through my death, they will try to take it by stripping away my humanity. I watch my sister speak frantically into the receiver. I know exactly what she is doing. The physical assassination failed. The legal assassination is about to begin. She is contacting a lawyer to build a smear campaign so vicious it will challenge my very sanity. I have only a few days to prepare for a courtroom ambush. The glow of my laptop screen illuminates the darkened VIP hospital suite. The camera feed showing the lobby downstairs has long since gone quiet. I sit upright against the pillows, adjusting the thick bandages strapped across my fractured collarbone. The physical danger has passed for tonight, but the psychological warfare is just beginning. I open a secure cloud application and sync my old phone number to my computer. A soft chime echoes in the sterile room. A text message materializes on the screen. It is from Victoria. The message reads, "Where are you hitting?" I stare at the extra letter in the final word. That single typo is a profound revelation. My older sister is a woman who curates her entire existence with ruthless precision. She edits her social media posts for hours to project an image of effortless wealth. A misspelled text means her hands were shaking. A misspelled text means the pristine golden facade is cracking under the immense pressure of her hidden debts. Julian and Victoria are running out of time. The private lenders they owe are not traditional banks. They are an offshore syndicate that operates in the shadows. They do not send polite overdue notices in the mail. They send intimidating individuals to knock on penthouse doors. Julian likely received a very specific threat forcing my family to accelerate their timeline. My survival ruined their quick cash grab. Instead of retreating into the shadows to cut their losses, they decided to double down. I spend the night running basic forensic traces on Julian's shell companies. Dawn breaks over the Manhattan skyline, casting long gray shadows across my hospital bed. A notification pops up on my encrypted email client. The sender is Grandpa Harrison's lead attorney, Mr. Sterling. The subject line indicates an emergency court filing. I click the portable document format file attached to the email. It is a petition for temporary emergency guardianship filed in the New York State Supreme Court. My eyes scan the dense legal paragraphs. The words hit me harder than the impact of the car crash. Victoria is petitioning a family court judge to seize legal control of my life. The document is a masterpiece of character assassination. She claims the 12-day coma left me with severe anoxic brain injury. The filing states I am suffering from extreme paranoia delusions and violent mood swings, making me entirely incompetent to handle my own medical or financial affairs. She paints herself as the devoted older sibling weeping over the tragic mental decline of her sister. Attached to the legal petition is Exhibit A. It is a sworn psychiatric evaluation. The signature at the bottom belongs to a licensed physician. I read his name and realize I have never met this man in my life. Yet he claims to have reviewed my preliminary hospital charts and concluded that I lack the cognitive capacity to understand complex decisions. The evaluation goes even further. It argues that Grandpa Harrison is suffering from age-related cognitive decline. Victoria claims I used my delusions to manipulate an elderly, vulnerable man into signing over a vast shipping fortune. She is asking the judge to invalidate the trust transfer, freeze the accounts, and appoint her as my sole legal conservator. The danger of this legal strategy is staggering. The conflict has shifted from a physical threat to a brutal legal assassination. If a judge grants the emergency injunction, I lose my basic civil rights. A conservatorship is a gilded cage. Victoria would possess the legal authority to dictate my medical treatments. She could legally forcibly move me to an isolated psychiatric facility. She could authorize doctors to administer heavy sedatives to keep me quiet. Most importantly, she would gain unhindered access to the $4.5 million. She would drain the trust to pay off the underground lenders and leave me locked in a padded room forever. I read the final page of the petition. The preliminary hearing is scheduled for Friday morning. I have exactly 4 days to construct an impenetrable defense. A cold sense of dread washes over me. I cannot simply walk into the courtroom and announce that my sister cut my brake lines. If I stand before a judge and accuse my family of attempted murder without irrefutable physical proof, I will sound exactly like the paranoid delusional patient described in their forged psychiatric report. Screaming the truth is exactly what they want me to do. It would validate their entire legal argument. I need cold, hard, undeniable documentation. My forensic accounting skills taught me a fundamental truth about human corruption. Every lie leaves a paper trail. The corrupt doctor who signed that fake evaluation did not risk his medical license out of the goodness of his heart. He received a payoff. Julian and Victoria are heavily leveraged, but they found enough cash to buy a medical professional. I just need to find the transaction. I close the legal document and open a new spreadsheet. I begin mapping out the variables. I list Julian's known associates, his failing tech startup accounts, and the offshore routing numbers Harrison previously identified. The pain in my chest flares sharply, serving as a constant reminder of the stakes. I realize I cannot fight this war from a hospital bed. A process server could arrive at the front desk at any moment to serve me with the court papers. If the hospital administrators are presented with a judge's temporary order, they might be legally obligated to hand my medical care over to my sister. The sterile white walls of this VIP suite suddenly feel like a holding cell. I am a sitting duck in this building. Furthermore, I need high-speed servers, secure routers, and absolute privacy to crack Julian's financial firewall. I need a place where my family cannot send private investigators to spy on my recovery. I pick up my burner phone and dial Harrison's direct line. He answers on the first ring. The sound of a crackling fireplace echoes in the background of his audio. "Did you read the petition?" he asks. His voice is calm but carries a lethal edge. "I read it," I reply. "Victoria is trying to lock me in a cage and steal the keys. She bought a doctor to forge the paperwork. I have 4 days to prove the evaluation is a lie." Harrison hums thoughtfully. "Your sister inherited your father's arrogance. She thinks she can outsmart the legal system by throwing forged paper at a judge. But paper catches fire very easily, Hazel. You just need to find the match." "I need to get out of this hospital," I tell him. "If they file a successful ex parte motion before Friday, they could show up here with the police and force a medical transfer. I need a secure location where I can trace the bribe money without looking over my shoulder." "Pack whatever belongings you have," Harrison instructs. I foresaw this maneuver the moment they walked into that lobby. My private security team is already waiting in the underground loading dock. They have a discreet transport vehicle ready. "Where am I going?" I ask. "You are coming to my estate in upstate New York," he says. "It is a gated compound. The perimeter is secured, and the local authorities respect my privacy. You will have all the technology and seclusion you need to dismantle your sister's little legal performance." I end the call and carefully swing my legs over the edge of the mattress. My muscles are weak from weeks of inactivity, but my resolve pushes me forward. The nurses arrive moments later to assist with my discharge. They provide me with a bag of necessary medications and strict instructions for monitoring my healing collarbone. I dress in a simple tracksuit provided by the security detail. The fabric rubs against my bandages, but I ignore the discomfort. 2 broad-shouldered men escort me down the hidden service elevator. We bypass the main floors and descend directly into the concrete depths of the hospital basement. A sleek black sport utility vehicle with tinted windows idles near the loading bays. The crisp night air hits my face, reminding me that the world outside has kept turning while I was trapped in a coma. I slide into the leather back seat. The heavy doors close, sealing me inside a secure armored bubble. As the vehicle pulls out of the garage and merges onto the bustling Manhattan streets, I look out the window. Somewhere in this city, my parents and my sister are toasting to their brilliant legal strategy. They believe they have trapped me in an unwinnable situation. They believe my silence is proof of their victory. They do not realize that silence is the sound of an accountant balancing the ledger. I have 4 days to expose a massive conspiracy, and I am going to follow the money straight to their door. The black sport utility vehicle leaves the glowing skyline of the city behind. We drive north for nearly 2 hours. The landscape shifts from concrete canyons to dense dark forests. We pass through a set of heavy iron gates flanked by towering stone pillars. The tires crunch along a winding gravel driveway. Harrison resides in a sprawling manor built in the 1920s. It sits on 50 acres of private secluded woodland. The security guards assist me out of the car. The night air is biting. My ribs throb with a sharp, fierce ache every time I take a breath, but my mind is razor sharp. The fog of the hospital pain medication is entirely gone. I am ready to work. The guards escort me into the ground floor study. The room is vast and quiet. The walls feature floor-to-ceiling shelves lined with leather-bound books. A roaring fire crackles in a heavy stone hearth, casting long, dancing shadows across the Persian rug. The large bay window is cracked open just a fraction of an inch. The smell of old pine wood and cold rain blows in from the dark forest outside. It is a rich, grounding scent. It smells like safety. I settle into a high-back leather chair, pulling a thick cashmere blanket over my aching collarbone. The technician places the secure laptop on the mahogany desk in front of me. I open my encrypted programs and begin the hunt. Julian is a man who builds his entire identity on perception. His technology company was supposed to revolutionize data logistics. In reality, it was an empty vanity project. He hosted lavish launch parties and rented premium office space in the financial district. He wanted to play the role of the visionary founder. But real business requires actual revenue. When his initial venture capital dried up 2 years ago, Julian refused to downsize. He kept up the illusion. The golden couple could not be seen flying commercial or selling their Tribeca penthouse. They required a constant stream of cash to maintain their flawless facade. I pull the banking records I extracted from my apartment server. I look at the initial $100,000 fraudulent credit line they took out in my name. I track the routing numbers to see where those stolen funds landed. The money did not go to a standard domestic bank. The funds were wired to a holding company registered in Delaware. I query the Delaware Corporate Registry database. The holding company is a ghost entity. It is owned by another shell corporation based in the Cayman Islands. As a forensic accountant, I know the specific red flags of shadow banking. Traditional lenders require collateral audits, transparent tax returns, and board approvals. Shadow lenders require none of those things. They provide liquid cash at astronomical interest rates to desperate people who cannot pass a standard credit check. I run a reverse trace on the Cayman entity using specialized financial tracking software. The digital footprints lead directly to an offshore lending syndicate known for financing illicit shipping operations. These are not men wearing suits who send sternly worded letters when a payment is missed. These are individuals who collect their debts through extreme intimidation and quiet violence. I need to see the original terms. I target Julian's personal home network. He claims to be a tech genius, but his home router still uses the factory default security protocols. It takes me less than 10 minutes to bypass his firewall and access his private desktop files. I search his hidden folders for anything related to the Cayman Shell Company. I find a scanned portable document format file buried in a folder labeled Personal Taxes. It is the original loan origination document signed 18 months ago. I open the file and study the ledger. The principal amount borrowed is exactly $2 million. The interest rate is predatory, compounding monthly at an extortionate percentage. Julian was drowning in his own hubris. He took the shadow money to keep his startup afloat, hoping a miraculous corporate buyout would eventually save him. That buyout never materialized. The interest ballooned out of control. The syndicate demanded their payment in full. I scroll down to the collateral section of the loan document. Shadow lenders require extreme leverage to secure their capital. If Julian defaulted, they needed a guarantee they could extract the value by force. I reach the final page at two familiar signatures sitting right below Julian's name, Richard and Brenda Montgomery. My parents co-signed the illicit loan. They legally pledged the deed to their primary residence as collateral to secure the offshore money. The pieces fall into perfect, terrifying alignment. My parents and my sister are not just driven by simple greed, they are facing utter ruin. If Julian defaults, the syndicate will seize my parents' home. They will strip the golden couple of their penthouse and leave them on the street. Given the nature of these lenders, they will likely resort to physical harm to send a message. This explains the sheer, unadulterated panic. This explains the heavy-duty wire cutters found near my brake lines. A regular person does not wake up one morning and casually decide to murder their younger sister for a larger inheritance. But a desperate, terrified person staring down a violent syndicate will do whatever it takes to survive. I was the easiest target on the board. My death would trigger a life insurance payout and unlock a clear path to challenge Harrison's shipping fortune. My blood was the currency they intended to use to buy their freedom. I refused to be their sacrificial lamb. I open a secure digital binder on the desktop. I begin compiling the evidence piece by piece. I save the offshore routing numbers proving the flow of dark money. I save the forged loan documents proving their desperate leverage. I attach the smart home audio recordings of Victoria casually planning my liquidation while I lay in a coma. I catalog every single piece of data with meticulous surgical precision. I am building a weapon made entirely of numbers and legal codes. This binder is airtight. It maps their entire criminal conspiracy from the initial shadow loan to the severed brake lines. The fire pops and hisses in the stone hearth. I finish the final encrypted backup just as the sun begins to rise over the tall pine trees outside the window. I close the laptop screen, feeling a sense of cold readiness settle into my bones. The truth is safely locked away. but the quiet peace of the upstate estate is suddenly shattered. The heavy mahogany doors of the study creak open. Grandpa Harrison steps into the room holding a thick stack of court papers. His expression is unusually grim. Victoria did not wait for the scheduled Friday hearing. Her corrupt lawyer just filed a surprise emergency motion in the dead of night. The legal ambush is moving faster than we anticipated. The heavy mahogany doors of the study creak open just as the morning sun begins to pierce through the dense pine trees outside. The quiet peace of the upstate estate shatters instantly. Grandpa Harrison steps into the room. He is not walking with his usual measured grace. His steps are rigid and hurried. He holds a thick stack of legal documents in his left hand. His jaw is set in a hard, unforgiving line. He approaches the desk where I am sitting with my encrypted laptop. He tosses the documents down right next to my coffee mug. The crisp, heavy weight of the legal summons paper, sliding across the polished wood, makes a sharp, definitive sound. It is the sound of a trap springing shut. Victoria did not wait, Harrison says. His gravelly voice fills the quiet room. Her lawyer found a sympathetic judge in the family court division. They filed an emergency ex parte motion in the middle of the night. The preliminary hearing is fast-tracked. We are ordered to appear in court in 48 hours. I pick up the stack of papers. My ribs throb in protest as I lean forward, but I ignore the pain. My eyes scan the dense legal paragraphs. The words hit me harder than the impact of the car crash itself. My older sister is not just coming after my civil rights anymore. She is expanding the war zone. She is targeting the patriarch. The primary document is a subpoena, demanding Harrison submit to an independent medical evaluation. Victoria is formally accusing the 82-year-old man of advanced elder cognitive decline. The petition claims he is suffering from severe dementia and was unduly influenced by a mentally unfit granddaughter. She is asking the judge to freeze the $4.5 million trust immediately pending a full investigation into his sanity. This is a textbook intimidation tactic used by ruthless corporate litigators. In the world of high society and global shipping empires, a public competency hearing is a fatal blow to a business legacy. If the public and the shareholders believe Harrison is losing his mind, his company stock will plummet. His board of directors might vote to remove him from his chairman's seat. Victoria and Julian are betting that Harrison will fold under the immense pressure. They expect him to cower and offer a quiet multi-million-dollar settlement out of court just to make the lawsuit disappear and avoid a messy public scandal. They underestimate the old man, and they severely underestimate me. While I continue reading through the fabricated allegations, my burner phone vibrates against the desk. The screen lights up with a message from a former accounting colleague. She happens to share social circles with my parents down in the city. She sent me a digital clipping from an exclusive Upper East Side Society newsletter. My parents, Richard and Brenda, did not just file court papers today. They launched a preemptive social strike to destroy my reputation before I could even speak. They leaked a highly curated tragic story to their elite New York country club. That club is the epicenter of their social universe. It is a place where wealthy elites trade rumors over expensive champagne and treat gossip as verified fact. My mother painted a heartbreaking picture for her affluent friends. She claimed her youngest daughter survived a horrific car wreck but suffered devastating permanent brain damage. She told everyone I was prone to sudden paranoid outbursts and severe delusions requiring constant medical supervision. She framed herself as the weeping, exhausted mother trying to save her broken child. This is the deflection. It is a masterstroke of psychological warfare. By attacking my sanity and Harrison's age, they are preemptively stripping us of our credibility. Why go to such extreme lengths to ruin my reputation among their wealthy peers? The answer is chillingly strategic. My parents know the state police are investigating the severed brake fluid line. Officer Miller is already asking questions at the impound lot. Soon the authorities will start knocking on doors and pulling security footage. If the police approach my parents, they have their defense already built. They will simply shake their heads and point to the forged psychiatric evaluation. They will tell the detectives that my paranoia is a tragic symptom of my brain injury. They will suggest that I probably damaged my own vehicle in a fit of delusion and forgot about it. They are shaping the narrative early, ensuring that no one will believe a single word I say. The reality of our situation settles over me like a heavy winter blanket. I sit back in the high leather chair and look at the encrypted digital binder on my computer screen. I have the offshore routing numbers. I have the shadow loan documents proving Julian is drowning in illicit debt. I have the smart home audio recording of Victoria packing up my apartment and casually waiting for me to expire. But I realize a stark, terrifying truth. Is any of this enough to prove attempted murder in a civil conservatorship hearing? The family court system is designed to protect vulnerable individuals. Judges in these specific venues often err on the side of caution. If a seemingly devoted older sister and two weeping parents stand before the bench and present a sworn medical document claiming the patient is a danger to herself, the judge will likely grant the temporary conservatorship pending a full trial. A temporary order is all Victoria needs. With temporary legal control, she gains immediate access to my finances. She can drain the $4.5 million trust in a single afternoon wire, the funds to her Cayman Islands shadow lenders, and leave me entirely destitute before the full trial ever begins. Once the money is gone, the offshore syndicate backs off and my family wins. I close my eyes and visualize the upcoming court date. The judge is going to look down from the bench at a woman who just woke up from a 12-day coma. If I walk into that courtroom and start pointing fingers shouting that my brother-in-law took heavy-duty wire cutters to my vehicle to appease a criminal lending syndicate, I will sound genuinely insane. The judge will look at the forged medical evaluation, look at my frantic accusations, and bring down the gavel in Victoria's favor. Yelling about attempted murder without irrefutable physical proof will make me look exactly as unhinged as my sister claims I am. The financial documents prove they have a motive. The smart home audio proves their callous greed. But neither of those things proves the physical act of sabotage. A defense attorney could argue that Julian was just a failing businessman, and Victoria was just an insensitive sister clearing out an apartment. They could argue the brake lines severed from road debris. I need a smoking gun. I need undeniable physical proof linking Julian directly to my underground parking garage on the night before the crash. I need something so concrete and indisputable that a family court judge cannot dismiss it as a wild conspiracy theory. I look up at Grandpa Harrison. He is standing by the stone hearth poking the dying embers with an iron rod. He looks tired, but his posture remains unyielding. He turns his head and asks me if the digital trail I uncovered overnight is enough to stop the injunction from moving forward. I tell him the truth. I tell him the financial records prove they are broke, but they do not prove they tried to kill me. The burden of proof is entirely on us to invalidate a sworn medical evaluation. If we walk into that hearing with circumstantial evidence, Victoria will lock me in a gilded cage and throw away the key. We sit in the quiet study, listening to the cold rain tapping against the large bay window panes. The pressure is mounting by the minute. The clock is ticking down to the Friday morning hearing. The walls of the expansive upstate manor suddenly feel like they are closing in on me. I need a miracle. I need a piece of evidence that Julian was too arrogant or too careless to hide. Just as the dread begins to take root deep in my chest, the heavy wooden doors of the study swing open once more. The sound startles me out of my spiraling thoughts. A man walks into the room shaking the rain off his dark trench coat. He is Harrison's lead private investigator. He is a retired New York police detective named Ray, who spent decades navigating the darkest, most corrupt corners of the city. He moves with a quiet, steady confidence, carrying a small metallic object in his palm. Ray walks over to the mahogany desk and looks me in the eye. He tells me he spent the night visiting the police impound lot where my wrecked vehicle is currently being held. He has a secret to share. It is a secret my brother-in-law never saw coming, and it is the exact key I need to spring the trap. The man standing in the doorway of the study shakes the cold upstate rain from his dark trench coat. His name is Ray. He is a retired New York City police detective who spent 30 years working homicides and organized crime units across the 5 boroughs. Grandpa Harrison retains him as a primary private investigator because Ray possesses a rare combination of relentless persistence and quiet discretion. He does not flinch at the sight of wealth, And he certainly does not respect the arrogant criminals who hide behind expensive zip codes. Ray walks across the Persian rug with a steady, measured gait. He stops in front of the heavy mahogany desk where I am sitting. He reaches into his coat pocket. He pulls out a small object and drops it onto the polished wooden surface. The metallic clink of the USB drive setting against the desk echoes sharply through the quiet room. It is a tiny rectangular piece of silver hardware. It looks entirely insignificant, but it carries the weight of a loaded weapon. I took a drive down to the state trooper impound lot, Ray says. His voice is a low, gravelly baritone. I still know a few desk sergeants in that precinct. They owed me a favor from the old days. I managed to get 15 minutes alone with your wrecked sedan before the primary mechanics returned from their lunch break. I look at the silver drive and then back up at the retired detective. You went to look at the severed brake fluid line, I ask. Ray shakes his head. No, Hazel. The state troopers already documented the wire cutter marks. I did not need to verify the sabotage. I went to the impound lot because I know how you operate. I is referring to a conversation we had 2 years ago. As a forensic accountant, I frequently audit hostile corporations and track embezzled funds for high net worth clients. My profession naturally creates enemies. Because I am a single woman living in Manhattan, I refuse to compromise on personal safety. Ray actually helped me select the security parameters for my vehicle. Julian claims to be a technology visionary. He builds software applications and cloud networks, but arrogant software developers often overlook the simplest physical hardware. Julian assumed my car was a standard luxury model. He did not realize I had installed a military-grade dual-facing dashcam system. The camera is disguised as a standard rear-view mirror attachment. It does not rely on a wireless cellular connection to upload data. Wireless signals can be jammed or interrupted by concrete parking structures. Instead, the camera is hardwired directly into the chassis of the vehicle. It records on a continuous loop and saves every file to a reinforced black box hidden deep beneath the passenger seat. More importantly, the system utilizes the proximity motion sensor. The engine does not need to be running for the hardware to wake up. I knew the impact of the crash warped the passenger side door, Ray continues. The local police did not pry it open because they had no reason to search the floorboards. I used a crowbar. I extracted the internal storage drive. Julian had no idea he was standing on a digital stage. My pulse accelerates. The throbbing ache in my fractured collarbone vanishes, replaced by an electric surge of adrenaline. I reach for the silver drive. My fingers are steady as I insert the device into the secure port on my laptop. The computer reads the hardware. A directory window opens on my screen displaying hundreds of encrypted video and audio files organized by date and timestamp. I navigate to the folder containing the records from the night before my accident. Grandpa Harrison steps closer to the desk, leaning heavily on his mahogany cane. Ray stands on the opposite side, folding his arms across his chest. The crackling fire in the stone hearth provides the only ambient noise in the study. I locate the exact timestamp, corresponding to the evening. I handed my spare garage key fob to my sister Victoria. I click the file. The video feed is pitch black because the underground parking garage keeps the motion sensor lights turned off to conserve energy. But the omnidirectional microphone captures audio with terrifying clarity. I turn the laptop speakers to maximum volume. The soundscape fills the room. First, we hear the heavy mechanical hum of the rolling security gate opening. The sound echoes against the concrete walls of the subterranean garage. A few seconds later, the distinct squeak of expensive rubber-soled shoes approaches the front bumper of my sedan. The proximity sensor triggers initiating the recording sequence. We hear the rustle of a heavy fabric coat. We hear a man grunting softly as he lowers himself onto the cold concrete floor. The audio captures the dry scraping noise of someone sliding their body underneath the undercarriage of the vehicle. The tension in the study is suffocating. Harrison grips the silver head of his cane. Ray remains perfectly still, watching the progress bar move across my screen. Then the definitive sound cuts through the speakers. It is a sharp metallic snap, the distinctive crunch of heavy-duty steel blades slicing through a thick rubber housing. It is the exact moment my primary brake fluid line is severed. A moment of silence follows the mechanical violence. The man under the car shifts his weight, dragging himself back out from beneath the chassis. He stands up, brushing the dust off his clothing. He exhales a long, ragged breath. Then Julian speaks. His voice is crisp, clear, and unmistakable. "Sorry, Hazel," he mutters into the darkness. "It is just business." The recording ends. The audio player returns to silence. I sit in the high back leather chair, staring at the black video screen. A cold, profound realization washes over my entire being. My brother-in-law did not hesitate. He did not express remorse. He equated the premeditated murder of his wife's sister to a simple corporate transaction. It was just business. My life was merely a negative integer on his balance sheet, a liability he needed to erase to balance his illicit offshore debts. The legal battle over the guardianship petition suddenly feels entirely secondary. Victoria and her corrupt lawyer are currently maneuvering through the family court system. They believe they hold the high ground. They submitted a forged psychiatric evaluation claiming I am suffering from severe brain damage. They expect us to panic. They expect Harrison to hire a team of defensive litigators to beg a judge for mercy. They are preparing for a long, drawn-out public trial where they can use their wealth and societal influence to paint me as a delusional, tragic victim. They have no idea I am sitting in a secluded upstate manor holding the equivalent of a loaded gun. We are not going to court, I say. My voice is quiet, but it carries an absolute, undeniable authority. Harrison raises an eyebrow. His pale blue eyes lock onto mine. The judge ordered a preliminary hearing for Friday morning, Hazel. If we fail to appear, Victoria will win the injunction by default. She will gain immediate conservatorship. I turn to the retired shipping magnate. We will not fail to appear, Grandpa. But we are going to change the battlefield. We are not going to fight them in a public venue where a judge might seal the records to protect their reputation. We are going to invite them to dig their own graves. I explain my strategy. In high-stakes corporate litigation, wealthy families often utilize private mediation to settle disputes discreetly. It avoids the media circus and keeps sensitive financial disclosures out of the public record. Julian and Victoria are desperate to keep their Cayman Islands shadow loans hidden from society. If we offer to move the conservatorship dispute into a closed-door mediation setting, they will eagerly accept. They will assume Harrison is terrified of a public competency hearing and is looking for a quiet venue to negotiate a financial surrender. We will invite them to a private deposition in a neutral location, I tell Ray and Harrison. We will let them sit across a polished conference table and formally enter their forged documents into the legal record. We will let my parents play their tragic roles. We will let Julian wear his expensive suit and act like the concerned relative. Most importantly, I add, leaning forward, I want the psychiatrist present. We demand that the doctor who signed the fake evaluation attends the mediation to testify to my supposed brain damage in person. Ray slowly nods, a grim smile forming on his weathered face. You want them to perjure themselves in front of a licensed mediator before you drop the hammer. I want them to walk right into the line of fire, I reply. I want them to feel the exact same hollow, sickening drop I felt when my foot pressed a dead brake pedal. Harrison reaches for the brass telephone sitting on the corner of the mahogany desk. He dials his lead corporate attorney. The plan is set into motion. We have the dark money financial routing numbers. We have the smart home audio of Victoria planning my liquidation. And now, thanks to a hidden black box and a relentless investigator, we have a recorded murder confession. The trap is fully primed, and the golden couple is about to RSVP to their own destruction. Friday morning arrives with a pale gray light breaking over the Manhattan skyline. We do not travel to the crowded, chaotic halls of the New York family court. Instead, my attorneys orchestrate a strategic relocation. We invite my family and their legal counsel to a private mediation session. The venue is a sleek, glass-walled high-rise law firm located on the 52nd floor of a premium financial district tower. It is the headquarters of Grandpa Harrison's lead corporate litigators. I sit at the far end of a long, polished mahogany conference table. My fractured collarbone sends a dull throb through my shoulder, but I keep my posture perfectly rigid. The room is designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer a dizzying view of the sprawling city below. The atmosphere is sterile and imposing, smelling faintly of lemon polish and expensive leather. The only sound cutting through the heavy tension is the rhythmic ticking of an antique grandfather clock standing in the corner. Each swing of the brass pendulum echoes like a judge striking a wooden gavel. The heavy double doors of the boardroom swing open. My family walks in. Victoria and Julian lead the procession. They look incredibly smug. My sister wears a tailored emerald green dress and carries a pristine designer handbag. Julian sports a custom navy suit with a silver silk tie. They look wealthy, successful, and untouchable. They project an aura of effortless superiority walking into the room, as if they already own the building. But my trained accountant eyes see right through the expensive fabric. I know the truth. Those clothes were purchased with shadow credit. Their luxurious lifestyle is entirely financed by the illicit offshore syndicate that currently holds the deed to my parents' home. Julian exudes a false confidence, rolling his shoulders and checking his luxury watch. He is eager to finish this errand and collect his prize. Richard and Brenda trail closely behind the golden couple. My mother wears a somber black blazer, dabbing the corners of her dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. My father adjusts his cuffs, trying to project patriarchal authority. They are playing the roles of the grieving, burdened family members. It is a performance they have perfected over decades of country club social events. Whenever Richard lost a fortune at the Atlantic City blackjack tables, Brenda would weep to her affluent friends about the burden of his unfortunate luck, seeking sympathy to cover their financial incompetence. Now they are utilizing that same theatrical sorrow to steal my life. Trailing behind them is a man I have never met. He carries a battered leather briefcase and wears a slightly wrinkled beige suit that clashes with the high-end aesthetic of my family. This is Dr. Elias Thorne. He is the licensed psychiatrist who signed the forged incompetency evaluation. Victoria brought him along to validate her legal ambush. He looks uncomfortable, sweating lightly under the recessed ceiling lights. They take their seats on the opposite side of the mahogany table. Victoria looks across the polished wood and offers me a smile dripping with fake predatory sympathy. "Oh, Hazel," she murmurs. Her voice is soft and patronizing. "I am so glad they let you out of the hospital bed for this. You look so tired, sweetheart. We are here to get you the help you need." I do not respond. I do not blink. I just stare at her. My silence unnerves her for a fraction of a second. A brief flicker of doubt crosses her eyes, but she quickly recovers, assuming my lack of response is a symptom of the brain damage she invented. She assumes I am docile. She assumes the trauma broke my spirit. Mr. Sterling, the lead attorney, representing my trust, sits beside me. He folds his hands over a blank yellow legal pad. His demeanor is icy and professional. He addresses the opposing counsel, initiating the mediation protocol. He states that we are present to review the emergency guardianship petition before forcing the matter into a public judicial docket. He outlines the rules of the session, reminding everyone that all statements made here are being transcribed by a court reporter sitting quietly in the corner of the room. He then invites Victoria's lawyer to present their primary evidence. The opposing attorney is a slick man with too much hair gel and a predatory grin. He nods eagerly, arranging his files. He gestures toward the wrinkled doctor sitting beside him. "We have brought Dr. Thorne to formally enter his medical evaluation into the mediation record," the opposing lawyer states. "This testimony will prove beyond any reasonable doubt that Hazel Montgomery lacks the cognitive capacity to manage her own medical and financial affairs. Furthermore, it will demonstrate that she is a danger to herself and highly vulnerable to financial exploitation by outside parties." Mr. Sterling gestures toward the center of the table. "Please proceed." Dr. Thorne clears his throat. The sound is wet and nervous. He avoids my gaze entirely. He focuses his attention on the blank notepad in front of him. He opens his briefcase and extracts a crisp stack of printed paper. He adjusts his wire-rimmed glasses and begins reading his fabricated report aloud to the room. "Based on my professional review of the preliminary hospital charts and the trauma protocols administered during her 12-day coma, I have reached a definitive medical conclusion," Thorne reads. His voice is monotonous, reciting the lies as if he were reading a grocery list. "The patient suffered significant anoxia during the accident. This lack of oxygen resulted in severe frontal lobe damage. I watch his hands. His fingers tremble slightly as they grip the edges of the paper. He is a man who knows he is committing a felony, but the promise of a payout is forcing him to push through the fear. The frontal lobe governs executive function logic and financial comprehension. Thorne continues flipping to the second page. The patient is currently exhibiting signs of profound cognitive decline. She is prone to paranoia and cannot accurately process reality. She is entirely incapable of managing basic finances, let alone executing the duties of a primary trustee for a multi-million-dollar estate. She requires immediate and permanent conservatorship to ensure her physical and psychological safety. Richard and Brenda nod along in unison. My mother lets out a theatrical, ragged sigh and covers her face with her handkerchief. My father reaches over and pats her shoulder, acting the part of the stoic protector. They are selling the tragedy. They want the mediator and the attorneys to see a broken family, making a heartbreaking decision for the good of their disabled daughter. They want the room to feel pity. Julian leans back in his expensive leather chair. He crosses his legs and smirks. He thinks this is the end of the road. He thinks the forged medical document is an impenetrable shield. He believes that because Thorne has a medical license, his words are unquestionable law. Julian is calculating the exact hour he can wire the trust funds to his Cayman Islands lenders. He runs his hand over his chin, looking supremely satisfied with his own destructive brilliance. I sit in silence. I listen to the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock counting down the seconds. I listen to the doctor finish reading his perjured evaluation, folding the paper neatly back into his briefcase. I watch my sister pretend to wipe a tear from her cheek, holding her designer handbag tight against her lap. As a forensic accountant, I have sat across the table from dozens of corrupt executives. I have watched arrogant men lie straight to my face while I held their damning ledgers in my briefcase. This moment feels exactly the same. They think they have cornered me. They believe I am a helpless, terrified woman trapped by their brilliant legal maneuver. They assume I will start crying or shouting, proving the exact emotional instability Thorne just described. They have no idea they are sitting in a room meticulously rigged for their destruction. I did not invite them to this glass-walled tower to debate my sanity. I invited them here to lock the doors and watch them burn their own escape routes. I let the silence stretch for 10 agonizing seconds after Thorne finishes speaking. I let them savor their false victory. I let Julian enjoy his smug smirk. Then I reach under the table and pull my encrypted leather binder onto the polished mahogany surface. The heavy thud of the binder hitting the wood makes Julian flinch. The time for playing the silent victim is over. It is time to dismantle the doctor and trigger the first explosive charge in this asymmetric war. The heavy thud of the encrypted leather binder hitting the mahogany surface draws every eye in the room. Julian shifts in his chair. Victoria narrows her gaze. They expect me to produce medical charts or letters from character witnesses defending my sanity. They expect an emotional plea. I do not raise my voice. I do not shed a single tear. I simply flip open the thick cover of the binder and locate the third tab. I extract a single crisp piece of standard printer paper. I slide it across the polished wood. The sheet glides silently, stopping exactly halfway between Dr. Thorne and Julian. "What is this?" Victoria asks. Her patronizing tone falters, replaced by a sharp edge of irritation. She gestures toward her attorney, telling him to intercept the document. But Thorne is sitting closer. The psychiatrist leans forward, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses to inspect the page. I watch the physiological changes take hold of the medical professional. As a forensic accountant, I observe people reacting to the sudden exposure of their deepest secrets. The signs are universal. A single bead of cold sweat forms right at the hairline on Thorne's forehead. It catches the recessed lighting of the boardroom, tracking slowly down his temple. His breathing becomes shallow. His fingers, rigid and stiff, hover just an inch above the paper. That document is a certified forensic financial trace, I state. My voice is calm, measured, and devoid of any emotional fragility. It maps a very specific transaction. Exactly 2 days after my sister filed her emergency guardianship petition, a wire transfer originated from a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. That offshore entity belongs to Julian. The transfer was for the precise amount of $25,000. Julian sits up straight. The smug smirk vanishes from his face instantly. He opens his mouth to speak, but my gaze cuts him off. The routing pathway was clumsy. I continue leaning back into my leather chair. Julian attempted to mask the origin by funneling the cash through a Delaware holding firm. But he made a critical error. He sent the final disbursement directly into a personal domestic checking account, an account belonging to Dr. Elias Thorne. The silence in the glass-walled room turns sharp and dangerous. The rhythmic ticking of the antique grandfather clock suddenly feels like a countdown. Thorne swallows hard. His Adam's apple bobs against his wrinkled collar. He looks up from the paper, his eyes darting frantically toward Victoria and then back to the exit doors. He realizes the trap. He knows the digital footprint is undeniable. The paper on the table is not a theory. It is a mathematical certainty. Mr. Sterling, my lead trust attorney, folds his hands neatly over his yellow legal pad. He does not raise his voice either. He simply lays out the stark reality of the situation. Dr. Thorne, Mr. Sterling, begins his tone, carrying the weight of a seasoned corporate litigator. You just read a fabricated psychiatric evaluation into an official mediation record. You diagnosed a patient you never examined based on a financial bribe. In the state of New York, that constitutes felony perjury, medical fraud, and criminal conspiracy to commit grand larceny. The opposing counsel, the slick man with too much hair gel, suddenly pushes his chair back from the table. He stares at his own expert witness, his jaw tight with panic. He recognizes a sinking ship and wants no part of a criminal conspiracy charge. Did you accept payment for this evaluation? He asks Thorne, his voice rising in pitch. Thorne cannot speak. His lips tremble. The bead of sweat drops from his jawline, hitting the collar of his beige suit. My attorney delivers the final blow. You have two choices, Dr. Thorne. You can stand by your fraudulent report, and my firm will forward this financial trace to the district attorney and the state medical board before lunch. You will lose your medical license and face a minimum of 5 years in a federal penitentiary. Or you can recant your evaluation, immediately withdraw your medical opinion, and leave this building. The psychological collapse of Dr. Elias Thorne takes less than 4 seconds. The promise of a $25,000 payday is nothing compared to the threat of a federal prison sentence. Self-preservation overrides his loyalty to my sister. I recant, he stammers. The words rush out of his mouth in a frantic, breathless panic. The report is invalid. I was misled. Victoria stands up so fast, her chair scrapes harshly against the hardwood floor. Elias, what are you doing? She demands. You cannot just leave. We have an agreement. The doctor does not care about their agreement. He ignores her entirely. He grabs his battered leather briefcase, leaving the fabricated evaluation sitting abandoned on the table. He scrambles to his feet, nearly tripping over the legs of his chair. He points a trembling finger at my sister. She lied to me, Thorne shouts, his voice cracking under the intense pressure. She told me the patient was legitimately incapacitated and just needed expedited paperwork. She said it was a standard family estate procedure. I withdraw my testimony. I was manipulated. He does not wait for a response. The psychiatrist turns and literally runs toward the heavy double doors. He shoves them open and disappears into the high-rise hallway, fleeing the boardroom as if the walls are on fire. The heavy doors swing shut, echoing through the silent room. The shift in power is sudden and absolute. Victoria remains standing, her jaw dropped in stunned disbelief. Her primary weapon, the cornerstone of her entire legal ambush, just evaporated into thin air. She looks down at the forensic trace sitting on the table and then looks wildly around the room. Julian stares at the mahogany surface. His face is pale. The realization that his hidden offshore accounts are no longer a secret crushes the remaining arrogance out of his posture. He knows that if I can trace a $25,000 bribe, I can trace the $2 million shadow loan. He is exposed. Richard and Brenda sit frozen on their side of the table. My father grips the armrests of his chair, his knuckles turning stark white. My mother drops her monogrammed handkerchief. The theatrical sorrow vanishes, replaced by raw, unfiltered panic. They realize they are not fighting a broken, traumatized victim. They are facing a financial predator who just dismantled their star witness without breaking a sweat. The opposing lawyer snaps his briefcase shut. He refuses to look at Victoria or Julian. "I cannot represent you in this matter," he states curtly. "The foundation of your petition is compromised. I am formally withdrawing as your legal counsel." He stands up, nods sharply to Mr. Sterling, and exits the boardroom with brisk, hurried steps. In the span of 5 minutes, the golden couple lost their doctor, their lawyer, and their entire legal strategy. They are stranded in hostile territory, stripped of their defenses. I look across the table at my family. The silence is profound. The grand illusion they built to steal my life is collapsing around them. The conservatorship threat is neutralized. They cannot force me into a psychiatric facility, and they cannot touch the $4.5 million trust. But the war is far from over. I know human nature. When cornered individuals lose their primary weapon, they do not surrender gracefully. They scramble for anything sharp they can find. They resort to dirty, desperate tactics. As Mr. Sterling calls for a brief 5-minute recess to officially strike the petition from the mediation record, I watch my mother stand up. Brenda's eyes are dark and frantic. She clutches her pearl necklace. The polite society facade is gone. She is a woman facing the loss of her home and her status, and she is preparing to strike a blow far below the belt. The conflict is about to escalate beyond legal maneuvers and plunge directly into personal extortion. Mr. Sterling formally requests a 5-minute recess to strike the emergency petition from the mediation record. He instructs the court reporter to pause the transcription machine. The sudden quiet in the boardroom feels heavy. Julian remains glued to his leather chair, staring blankly at the polished mahogany wood. Victoria refuses to make eye contact with anyone. Her pristine emerald dress now looks like a costume she wore to the wrong play. The golden couple is entirely paralyzed by the sudden collapse of their legal ambush. I decide to use the short break to stretch my legs. Sitting rigid for an hour aggravates my fractured collarbone. I stand up slowly, keeping my posture straight. I excuse myself and walk toward the heavy double doors. As I step out into the high-rise hallway, I notice my mother rising from her seat. Brenda follows me. Her movements are quick and deliberate. She is no longer playing the weeping matriarch. Her stride is purposeful and sharp. I know exactly what is happening. When predators fail to trap their prey using complex snares, they resort to brute force. I navigate the carpeted corridor and enter the women's restroom. The space is a sanctuary of corporate luxury. The walls feature imported white marble. The lighting is soft and flattering, reflecting off the pristine mirrors above a row of polished brass sinks. I walk over to the basin and turn on the warm water. I let it run over my hands, feeling the soothing temperature against my skin. The heavy wooden door swings shut behind me. The metallic click of the deadbolt sliding into place echoes against the marble tiles. I look up into the mirror. Brenda stands directly behind me. The polite society facade is completely gone. Her face is pale and taut. Her eyes carry a frantic, feral glint. The confined space instantly fills with the suffocating heavy scent of her signature perfume. It is a vintage Chanel fragrance. She has worn it every day since I was a child. Growing up, that floral scent signaled her arrival at parent-teacher conferences and charity galas. It was the scent of a woman who commanded respect through sheer intimidation. Today, it just smells like desperation. Brenda closes the distance between us. She does not bother with pleasantries. She reaches out and grabs my left arm. Her grip is surprisingly strong for a woman who spends her days attending Pilates classes and high tea. Her manicured acrylic nails dig sharply into my skin right below the edge of my medical sling. A fresh spike of pain shoots across my healing collarbone. I do not wince. I do not pull away. I simply meet her gaze in the reflection of the mirror. "You think you are so clever, Hazel," she hisses. Her voice is a venomous whisper bouncing off the hard marble surfaces. "You think you can just embarrass us in front of these corporate lawyers and walk away with $4 million. You think you hold all the cards because you found one sloppy wire transfer." I turn around slowly, forcing her to release my arm. I face her directly. What do you want, Mom? I want half the trust, Brenda demands. Her chest heaves with erratic breaths. I want $2.25 million wired into a secure offshore account before the sun goes down today. You are going to tell your fancy lawyer to draft the transfer paperwork the moment we walk back into that boardroom. I stare at her, trying to fathom the sheer audacity of her demand. You and your son-in-law orchestrated a plot to kill me, I state calmly. You forged a psychiatric evaluation to lock me in a padded cell, and now you expect me to hand you $2 million. Why would I ever agree to that? Because if you refuse, I will destroy your precious grandfather, Brenda sneers. She takes a step closer, crowding my personal space. My mother was never a physical brawler. She fights her battles in the shadows of high society. She destroys her rivals using whispered rumors, leaked scandals, and carefully planted lies. Over the years, I watched her ruin the reputations of countless country club members just to secure a seat on a prestigious charity board. Now she is turning that exact same psychological artillery on her own family. If you do not sign over the money, Brenda continues, I am going to contact a media broker. I have friends at the major financial tabloids. I will hand them a fabricated dossier claiming Harrison built his entire shipping empire on human trafficking and the smuggling of illicit narcotics during the 1970s. I will tell the press that Richard and I discovered his dark secrets, and that is the real reason the old man disowned us 10 years ago. I listened to her outline the extortion plot. The malice in her voice is staggering. Do you know what a story like that will do to a global logistics company? Brenda asks, her eyes wide with frantic energy. The board of directors will force Harrison out before the weekend is over. The stock price will crater. The federal authorities will open a massive investigation into his early trade routes. The scandal will humiliate him globally. He is 82 years old, Hazel. A public crucifixion of that magnitude will cause a fatal heart attack. I will destroy his legacy, his fortune, and his life. She is entirely serious. She is willing to annihilate an innocent elderly man simply to save her own skin. She needs the $2 million to pay off Julian's offshore syndicate and protect her Tribeca lifestyle. She does not care who she has to sacrifice to balance her ledger. You owe us, Brenda whispers, stepping so close I can feel the heat of her breath. We gave you life. You are going to give us the money. I look her dead in the eye. The frantic panic radiating from her body is palpable. She expects me to crumble. She expects the threat against the patriarch to break my resolve. She thinks I am still the quiet, obedient daughter who used to hide in her bedroom while my parents fought over gambling debts. She fails to understand that forensic accountants never enter a hostile negotiation unprepared. I reach into the pocket of my blazer. My fingers wrap around the cool, smooth metal of my smartphone. I pull the device out and hold it up between us. The screen is already illuminated. It displays a digital audio waveform recording in real time. The timer reads 4 minutes and 12 seconds. I pressed the record button right before I walked out of the boardroom. I knew Brenda would follow me. I knew she would attempt one final desperate maneuver the moment we were alone. I tapped the red circle on the screen. The application stops recording and automatically saves the high-definition audio file to my secure cloud server. You always did talk too much, Mom, I say. My voice is flat, emotionless, and absolute. Brenda looks at the phone. Her eyes widen until the whites show. The blood drains from her cheeks, leaving her complexion a sickly ashen gray. The realization hits her like a physical blow. In the state of New York, recording a conversation requires the consent of only one participating party. I just captured a crystal-clear audio confession of her attempting felony extortion and blackmail. If you ever mention my grandfather's name to the press, I tell her I will hand this audio file directly to the district attorney. Blackmail carries a substantial prison sentence. You would not survive a week in a state penitentiary. She staggers backward, her shoulders slump. The commanding, terrifying matriarch vanishes, replaced by a hollow, terrified shell of a woman. She reaches out, grabbing the edge of the marble sink to steady herself. Her knees tremble visibly beneath her expensive black skirt. I do not offer her a hand. I do not offer her a shred of comfort. I turn my back on her and walk toward the exit. I unlock the heavy wooden door and pull it open. The bright lights of the corporate hallway spill into the restroom. I leave her standing by the sinks, pale and trembling, trapped in the suffocating cloud of her own perfume. I walk back down the carpeted corridor toward the glass-walled boardroom. The 5-minute recess is over. The trap has successfully neutralized every single offensive weapon my family possessed. They lost their doctor, they lost their lawyer, they lost their blackmail leverage, they are entirely disarmed. But the final phase of this asymmetric war is not about defense. It is about total financial ruin. I push the double doors open and step back into the mediation room. Julian is still staring at the table. Richard looks up, his face a mask of anxious dread. They have no idea that the real punishment is just about to begin. The final checkmate is already in motion, and I am going to let them walk right into the devastating payoff. I push the heavy glass doors open and walk back into the boardroom. Brenda follows a few seconds later. My mother moves like a ghost. Her previous arrogant stride is gone. She shuffles toward her chair, keeping her eyes firmly fixed on the patterned carpet. She sits down and folds her trembling hands in her lap. Julian is pacing the length of the window. He runs his fingers through his expensive haircut. His custom navy suit looks stifling now. Richard remains seated, but the tension is taking a visible toll. A dark patch of sweat bleeds through the back of his crisp cotton shirt. They are all trapped in a holding pattern, waiting for the mediator to formally dismiss the session. Mr. Sterling clears his throat. He addresses the room, stating that opposing counsel formally withdrew. The emergency guardianship petition is nullified. The threat of the conservatorship is officially dead. Julian stops pacing. He lets out a ragged breath, assuming the worst is over. He thinks he just lost the offensive battle but survived the war. He believes he can simply walk out of this high-rise tower, regroup with his offshore syndicate, and find another way to extract the necessary capital. I is gravely mistaken. I reach into my pocket and pull out the silver USB drive retired Detective Ray gave me. I set it down on the polished mahogany surface. The metal clinks against the hard wood. The sound cuts through the quiet room, drawing every eye toward my side of the table. "You thought you covered your tracks, Julian," I say. My voice is steady, echoing in the sterile corporate space. "You disabled the security cameras in my apartment. You assumed my vehicle was just a standard luxury sedan. You failed to realize I installed a military-grade dual-facing dashcam system with a hardwired black box." Julian freezes. The remaining color drains from his cheeks. He stares at the small silver drive as if it were a venomous snake resting on the table. I plug the device into my laptop. I do not need to explain the motion sensors or the audio capture technology. I just need him to hear his own crime. I maximize the volume output on my computer speakers. The heavy silence of the room amplifies the approaching digital playback. I press play. The boardroom fills with the dark acoustics of my underground parking garage. The audio captures the distinct squeak of Julian wearing his expensive rubber-soled shoes, approaching the front bumper of my car. We hear the rustle of his heavy coat. We hear him grunting as he slides his body underneath the chassis. Richard leans forward, his brow furrowed in confusion. He recognizes his son-in-law's voice, but the context escapes him. Brenda stares blankly at the laptop. Then the sharp metallic snap rings out through the computer speakers. It is the distinct, unmistakable crunch of heavy-duty steel blades slicing through a thick rubber brake fluid line. A few seconds of dead air follow the mechanical sabotage. Then Julian speaks on the recording. "Sorry, Hazel. It is just business." I stop the playback. The words hang in the cold air of the glass-walled room. "Sorry, Hazel. It is just business." Julian collapses into his leather chair. He covers his face with both hands, burying his eyes in his palms. His breathing turns jagged and shallow. The illusion of the visionary tech founder shatters, leaving behind a terrified, desperate criminal. Richard turns his head slowly, staring at Julian. "My father is a weak man, a degenerate gambler, and an absent parent. But he always believed Julian was the savior of the family. Hearing the undeniable proof of premeditated murder breaks the final pillar of his reality." "You cut her brakes," Richard whispers, his voice trembling. "You tried to kill my daughter." Julian does not answer. He cannot speak. He is drowning in the realization that his freedom is gone. The normal response to hearing a murder confession is to call the authorities. But I am a forensic accountant. I view the world through the lens of ledgers, debts, and equities. Sending Julian to prison is a matter for the criminal justice system. But punishing my family for their betrayal requires a much deeper financial execution. I close the media player on my laptop. I look across the table at the 3 people who left me to die in a hospital bed. The police are going to handle the criminal charges, I state, keeping my tone analytical and cold. But we are here to discuss your debts. Victoria finally looks up. Her eyes are red-rimmed and frantic. She tries to maintain a shred of defiance. You have nothing else, she snaps. The petition is dead. We are leaving. You are not going anywhere, Victoria, I reply. Because you owe me money. She lets out a bitter, hollow laugh. We do not owe you a single dime. We owe a private equity firm in the Cayman Islands. I open the final digital folder on my desktop. I extract a thick stack of printed legal contracts from my binder. I slide the heavy packet across the mahogany table. You are partially correct, I tell her. You owed a syndicate in the Cayman Islands, but shadow lending operates on a very specific set of rules. Illicit debt is a financial asset. It can be packaged, sold, and traded just like any other corporate bond. Those lenders are pragmatic businessmen. They prefer liquid cash over the hassle of foreclosing on domestic real estate. I watch Julian lower his hands from his face. He stares at the thick packet of contracts resting in front of him. His tech startup dealt with corporate acquisitions. He understands exactly what I'm describing. Grandpa Harrison did not just transfer $4.5 million into my name to hide it. Hide it, I continue. He gave me the capital to go on the offensive. Using the financial routing numbers I extracted from your home network, I contacted your offshore lenders through a holding company managed by Mr. Sterling. I offered to purchase your entire $2 million debt portfolio at a premium. They accepted the wire transfer early this morning. The boardroom goes deathly still. The ticking of the grandfather clock sounds like a hammer striking an anvil. I point to the packet on the table. That is the new deed of trust and the reassigned loan origination documents. I am not just a survivor of your assassination attempt. I am now your sole legal creditor. I own the paper on your lives. Brenda lets out a choked, suffocating gasp. Her hands fly to her mouth. She understands the gravity of the transaction. She co-signed that loan. She pledged the deed to her house. I look directly at my parents. You put your primary residence up as collateral to secure Julian's tech funding. Because I now own that debt, I own the mortgage to your estate. I hold the remaining equity in Julian's failing company. I possess the rights to the Tribeca penthouse. Every asset you claim to own is legally bound to my signature. Richard shakes his head back and forth, his face pale and slick with sweat. Hazel, please, he begs. His voice is a pathetic, fragile whisper. We are your family. You cannot do this. We will pay you back. We will figure it out. I lean forward, resting my forearms on the table. The dull throb in my collarbone fuels the cold precision of my words. You left me in a coma, Richard. You signed a waiver refusing my medical care and walked away. You tried to steal my apartment while I was breathing through a ventilator. You are not my family. You are a bad investment, and I am liquidating my portfolio. I turn my gaze back to Julian and Victoria. As your primary debt holder, I am officially calling the loan due. Since you do not possess $2 million in liquid capital, you are in immediate default. I am foreclosing on the Tribeca penthouse. I am foreclosing on the corporate assets. I am seizing the family estate. The eviction notices are being filed with the county clerk as we speak. You have nothing left. The devastation is total. There is no loophole. There is no emergency injunction that can save them. They tried to steal an inheritance to pay off a monster. They never realized I would simply buy the monster and turn it loose on them. Their elite country club lives, their designer clothes, their entire social standing just vanished with a single stroke of a pen. They sit frozen in the glass-walled tower, breathing the sterile air, stripped of everything they valued. The financial ruin is comprehensive, but the checkmate is a two-part operation. Stripping their wealth only settles the ledger. It does not balance the scales of justice. Mr. Sterling checks his expensive wristwatch. He closes his yellow notepad and stands up from the table. He looks toward the heavy double doors of the boardroom. Right on schedule, he murmurs. Through the thick glass walls, I see movement in the corridor. The receptionist at the front desk stands up, pointing toward our mediation room. Heavy footsteps echo on the carpet outside. The financial execution is complete. The criminal reckoning has arrived. The heavy double doors of the boardroom do not swing open to reveal the returning mediator. Instead, the glass panels part to admit two individuals who look entirely out of place in the pristine 52nd floor corporate sanctuary. They do not wear custom-tailored suits or carry designer briefcases. They wear functional trench coats over standard-issue department clothing. They walk with the heavy measured steps of men who deal with the grim reality of the city streets on a daily basis. The two plainclothes detectives from the New York Police Department step into the room. The lead officer, a broad-shouldered man with graying hair, pulls a leather wallet from his interior pocket. He flips it open to display a polished gold shield. He introduces himself as Detective Russo from the Major Crimes Division. His partner, Detective Gallagher, stands silently by the doorway, blocking the only exit. Julian stops breathing. He stands frozen near the floor-to-ceiling window, his expensive leather shoes rooted to the patterned carpet. The smug, arrogant aura of the visionary tech founder evaporates instantly. He looks like a cornered animal realizing the trap has snapped shut. Julian Ashford. Detective Russo says, his voice carrying a gritty, authoritative weight that cuts through the sterile boardroom air. "We have a warrant for your arrest." Julian stammers. He raises his hands in a frantic, placating gesture. "There must be a misunderstanding," he stutters, his voice cracking under the sudden immense pressure. "You cannot just walk in here. I demand to speak to my attorney." "Your attorney formally withdrew his representation 15 minutes ago," Mr. Sterling replies smoothly from his seat beside me. "You currently lack legal counsel, Mr. Ashford." Russo steps forward, closing the distance between the door and the window in 3 long strides. He does not care about Julian's wealth or his zip code. The detective grabs Julian by the shoulder, spinning the tech executive around and forcing his hands behind his back. "You are being charged with attempted murder in the 1st degree," Russo states, reciting the criminal code with practiced efficiency. "You are also facing secondary charges for felony tampering with a motor vehicle and criminal conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Julian struggles for a brief, pathetic second. He tries to pull his arms free, relying on a sense of unearned privilege that no longer exists. Gallagher steps in, immediately neutralizing the weak resistance. Then comes the sound that officially ends the reign of the golden couple. It is the sharp, undeniable metallic click of handcuffs closing around Julian's wrists. The cold steel bites into the cuffs of his custom navy suit, locking his hands together. The sound is final. It is the definitive punctuation mark on a ruined life. Victoria shatters. The pristine emerald dress and the curated socialite persona dissolve in an instant. She lets out a shrill, piercing scream that echoes painfully off the glass walls. She drops her crocodile skin handbag, spilling lipstick and credit cards across the mahogany table. "Julian," she shrieks, lunging toward the detectives. "You cannot take him. Do you know who we are?" Gallagher puts a firm hand on her shoulder, pushing her back to maintain a safe perimeter. "Step away, ma'am," the detective orders. Victoria spins around, wild-eyed and frantic. She looks at Richard. My father is still sitting in his chair, his face buried in his hands. Victoria grabs his lapels, shaking him with terrifying desperation. "Do something, Dad," she screams. Her voice is ragged and ugly, stripped of all its polished country club etiquette. "Call the judge. Call the borough president. Call someone from the club. You have connections. Fix this right now." But Richard cannot fix this. Richard is paralyzed. He is a man who spent his entire adult life projecting the illusion of immense power while quietly gambling away his inheritance. He relied on Grandpa Harrison's name to open doors and secure favors. Now he has no money, no leverage, and no name. He looks up at his oldest daughter, his eyes vacant and terrified. "I have nothing, Victoria," he whispers. The admission falls from his lips like a death sentence. "We have nothing left." The true scale of the devastation finally settles over the room. It is a total systemic collapse. I remain seated, watching the chaos unfold, with the detached clinical observation of a forensic accountant reviewing a finalized ledger. I do not feel the urge to gloat. I do not feel a rush of vindictive joy. I simply feel the quiet satisfaction of a balanced equation. Mr. Sterling opens a fresh folder on his desk and begins laying out the civil realities accompanying the criminal arrest. While the detectives process Mr. Ashford, Mr. Sterling announces, ensuring his voice carries over Victoria's weeping, the civil execution is proceeding concurrently. Ms. Montgomery's financial team initiated the asset freeze the moment the offshore debt transfer cleared. Brenda looks up, her mascara running down her pale cheeks in dark, jagged lines. "What does that mean?" she gasps. "It means your bank accounts are currently locked," I tell my mother. "The offshore syndicate you borrowed from required extensive collateral. Because I now own that debt, and you are in default, I exercise the immediate forfeiture clauses. Your checking accounts, your savings, your investment portfolios, and your retirement funds are frozen. The digital routing numbers were suspended 10 minutes ago." Brenda grabs the edge of the table, her knuckles turning stark white. "You cannot take our home, Hazel. Where are we supposed to go? You should have thought about your living arrangements before you co-signed a shadow loan to finance a murder," I reply. My voice is devoid of any pity. "The eviction notices are already filed with the county clerk. You have 48 hours to vacate the primary residence. The consequences multiply rapidly." I explain the secondary layer of their destruction. The $100,000 fraudulent credit line they opened in my name is now in the hands of federal investigators. Julian and Victoria are facing imminent federal wire fraud charges. The authorities will seize whatever remaining assets Julian hid in his tech startup to pay the restitution. But the financial ruin is only half of the punishment. For narcissists who build their entire existence around societal perception, public humiliation is a fate far worse than bankruptcy. "You leaked a story to your elite country club this morning," I remind Brenda, holding her terrified gaze. "You told your wealthy friends that I was suffering from severe brain damage. You tried to build a tragic narrative to protect your reputation. But high society thrives on fresh scandal." Mr. Sterling nods, sliding a printed press release across the table. Grandpa Harrison's public relations firm acquired the police blotter detailing Julian's arrest. They forwarded the official criminal charges to the local New York papers and several prominent society newsletters. By dinner time tonight, the entire Upper East Side will know the truth. They will know Julian is a failed businessman sitting in a holding cell for attempted murder. They will know Richard and Brenda lost their estate to an underground lending syndicate. The country club board of directors despises criminal controversy. They will revoke your memberships before the evening gala begins, I tell them. The charities you chair will demand your immediate resignations. The wealthy friends you spent decades trying to impress will block your phone numbers. You are socially radioactive. You will never be able to show your faces in those elite circles again. Brenda covers her face with her hands, sobbing uncontrollably into her palms. The loss of her status breaks her far more effectively than the loss of her home. She is mourning the death of her social identity. Detective Russo finishes securing Julian. The tech executive refuses to look at me. He keeps his head down, his shoulders slumped, staring at the carpet. All the arrogant corporate buzzwords and the predatory confidence have vanished. He is just a frightened man, wearing handcuffs, preparing to trade his penthouse for a concrete cell. "Let us go," Ashford Russo commands, pulling Julian toward the heavy double doors. Gallagher leads the way, stepping out into the high-rise corridor. Victoria follows them, stumbling over her own feet, clutching her ruined designer dress. She is weeping loudly, mourning the evaporation of her golden life. Richard stands up, his movements slow and agonizing, like a man aging 10 years in a single afternoon. He places a trembling hand on Brenda's shoulder, guiding her out of the boardroom. I remain seated in the leather chair, watching the procession exit the glass-walled room. The law firm employees gather in the hallway, murmuring in hushed tones, as they watch the disgraced family perform their walk of shame toward the elevators. The doors slide shut, swallowing my parents and my sister, taking them out of my life forever. The boardroom is finally quiet. The ticking of the antique grandfather clock resumes its steady, rhythmic pace. The heavy scent of Brenda's perfume slowly dissipates, replaced by the sterile, clean smell of the corporate tower. Mr. Sterling gathers his legal pads and slides the USB drive back into my encrypted binder. He looks across the table, offering a rare, genuine smile. "The accounts are settled, Hazel," he says softly. I nod, closing the binder. I sit in the silence for a long moment, letting the reality of the victory wash over me. I do not feel anger anymore. The burning rage that kept me awake during the long nights in the hospital has extinguished itself. I do not feel any lingering familial pity either. They made their choices and I simply provided the receipts. What I feel is a profound, sweeping sense of peace. It is the exact sensation of closing a toxic, corrupted file and dragging it into the incinerator. It is the quiet peace of taking out the trash. The asymmetric war is over. I survived the physical assassination, and I dismantled the legal ambush. I protected the patriarch and secured the legacy. But surviving a war is only the first step. The true measure of a victory lies in what you build in the aftermath. With the predators permanently removed from my life, I finally have the space to heal my broken bones and redefine the meaning of family. Time is a reliable auditor. It measures the exact distance between trauma and recovery, balancing the ledger of human resilience. 6 months have passed since the glass doors of that financial district boardroom closed on my former family. Today I take a deep breath. My lungs expand fully without restriction. The fractured collarbone is entirely repaired, leaving behind nothing more than a faint silver scar across my shoulder. I do not flinch when I move. The physical pain is a closed chapter. I sit in the center of my new living room. It is a secure penthouse high above the noise of the city, offering an unobstructed panoramic view of Central Park. The morning sun spills across the wide oak floorboards, bathing the space in a warm golden light. The security protocols here are impenetrable, featuring biometric scanners and dedicated private elevators. I wrap my hands around a ceramic mug. The warmth of the fresh, dark roast coffee radiates through my palms. It is a simple, quiet sensation, but it grounds me in the present reality. I am safe. I am in control. Grandpa Harrison sits across from me, resting in a plush armchair. He wears a comfortable knit sweater, trading his sharp corporate suits for a well-earned retirement wardrobe. He holds a crisp copy of the morning newspaper. A genuine and easy smile lifts the corners of his mouth. The heavy burden of defending his shipping legacy is gone. We protected the empire, and now he gets to enjoy the peace he built over a lifetime of hard work. He turns a page, the paper rustling softly in the tranquil room. He lowers the newspaper and looks at me, tapping a printed article on the business page. The headline mentions the formal launch of the Montgomery Vanguard Initiative. That is my new project. I did not just absorb the $4 million trust to live a life of idle luxury. Forensic accounting is not merely a career for me. It is a calling. I utilized a substantial portion of the inheritance to establish a robust legal defense foundation. We provide top-tier financial investigators and ruthless corporate litigators to victims of medical fraud and elder financial abuse. We hunt the predators who hide behind complex legal trusts and shadow loans. Just last week, my team dismantled a predatory nursing home administrator who was secretly draining the retirement accounts of isolated seniors. We traced his hidden offshore transfers, froze his domestic assets, and handed the airtight dossier directly to the state prosecutor. I transformed the exact tactics my family used against me into a weapon to protect the vulnerable. The money that was supposed to fund a fraudulent, glamorous lifestyle now funds the worst nightmare of corrupt opportunists across the state. The people who orchestrated my assassination attempt are currently discovering the harsh, unforgiving logic of the American justice system. Julian is sitting in a federal holding facility, awaiting his criminal trial. The district attorney denied his bail application, citing his connections to an offshore criminal syndicate as an extreme flight risk. The custom-tailored Navy suits are gone, replaced by a standard-issue orange uniform. His tech startup was seized and liquidated by the federal government to pay restitution for the wire fraud. He is facing up to 15 years in a maximum security penitentiary. The visionary founder is now just another inmate number waiting for a judge to dictate his future. The fallout for Victoria and my parents is less theatrical, but arguably much more agonizing for individuals obsessed with high society status. They were formally evicted from the Tribeca penthouse and the sprawling family estate. With their bank accounts frozen and their credit scores decimated, they were forced to relocate. They now live in a cramped two-bedroom rental apartment deep in the outer boroughs of Queens. The true financial checkmate is the garnishment. Because I acquired their shadow debt, I hold a permanent legal judgment against their future earnings. They owe the trust millions. The civil court ordered a maximum wage garnishment. Richard, who has not worked a legitimate job in 3 decades, was forced to take a position as a night shift logistics clerk at a regional shipping warehouse. He spends his nights loading boxes onto freight trucks. Brenda operates a cash register at a discount retail pharmacy, standing on her feet for 8 hours a day. Victoria, the former socialite influencer, now works as a customer service representative for a budget airline fielding angry phone calls for minimum wage. Every Friday, their meager paychecks are automatically intercepted. The government takes its taxes and my trust extracts its mandated percentage. They are left with barely enough currency to cover their rent and basic groceries. They ride the crowded subway trains during rush hour, rubbing shoulders with the working-class citizens they spent their entire lives mocking. But the ultimate astonishment, the twist they never saw coming, arrived during the spring tax season. In the United States, when a massive debt is foreclosed upon or settled, the Internal Revenue Service considers the discharged amount as taxable income. My legal team ensured the offshore loans were formally categorized under federal guidelines. Because they lost the $2 million debt through foreclosure, the federal government hit Richard, Brenda, and Victoria with an astronomical phantom income tax bill. They are trapped in a perpetual cycle of financial ruin. They can never declare bankruptcy to escape federal tax liability. They will spend the rest of their natural lives working menial blue-collar jobs, handing their wages over to the daughter they tried to bury and the government they tried to cheat. The golden couple and the arrogant parents are permanently chained to the bottom of the economic ladder. I take another sip of my coffee, looking out over the vibrant green canopy of the park. I do not track their daily movements anymore. I receive the automated deposit notifications from their garnished wages every month, but I do not give them a second thought. They are ghosts to me now. Society often weaponizes the concept of blood relatives. People will tell you that you must forgive toxic behavior because you share a biological lineage. They expect you to endure betrayal, manipulation, and theft in the name of keeping the peace at the holiday dinner table. But blood is merely a biological accident. It does not entitle anyone to your unwavering loyalty. Real family is defined by the individuals who show up for you when the lights go out. Real family is the grandfather who marches into a hospital intensive care unit with a team of lawyers to protect your future. It is the retired detective who breaks open a wrecked car in a muddy impound lot to find the hidden truth. It is the tired nurse who stands her ground against arrogant predators demanding your death certificate. If someone in your life is using the word family as a shield to steal your peace, your money, or your sanity, you hold the power to cut the cord. You do not owe them your life. You do not owe them your silence. You owe yourself the truth and the freedom to walk away. If this story resonated with you, or if you have ever had to draw a hard line to protect your own future, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share your experience. Hitting that subscribe button helps us bring more stories of resilience to the world. Thank you for listening to Calm Senior Stories. Always remember to guard your peace, and I will see you in the next video. The architecture of survival. We are raised on a very specific picture-perfect version of the American family. We see it in the golden hour glow of holiday commercials, and hear it in the old adage that blood is always thicker than water. We are taught to forgive to keep the peace, and to always set a place at the table for our relatives, no matter how many times they break the plates. But Hazel Montgomery's story forces us to look at the dark underbelly of that cultural myth. What happens when the people who are supposed to protect you are the very ones holding the knife? Hazel's journey is a uniquely modern American tragedy turned triumph. Her family's betrayal wasn't born of sudden madness. It was bred from the relentless, suffocating pressure of societal status. The pursuit of the American dream, when entirely divorced from morality, rapidly devolves into a nightmare. In a culture that frequently equates net worth with human worth, her parents and sister traded their souls for a Tribeca penthouse and the quiet approval of country club elites. Julian and Victoria were so desperate to maintain their curated social media perfect lives that they viewed Hazel not as a sister, but as a liquid asset to be harvested. They weaponized the concept of family to cover their debts, proving that greed, when wrapped in the guise of kinship, is the most dangerous predator of all. The profound lesson here isn't just about financial literacy or the satisfying sting of revenge. It is about the revolutionary act of setting an absolute, unapologetic boundary. In a society that constantly pressures victims to be the bigger person or sweep trauma under the rug for the sake of appearances, Hazel chose the ledger. She chose the undeniable truth. Her method of self-preservation was distinctly pragmatic. She didn't rely on emotional outbursts or screaming matches to make her point. She relied on receipts. She teaches us that boundaries do not always need to be loud to be effective, they simply need to be unbreakable. By severing the cord and seizing her own power, she redefined what family actually means. Family isn't a biological accident or a shared last name. It is the quiet, steadfast presence of the people who stand guard at your hospital door when the rest of the world walks away. We all have our own ledgers to balance. We all have relationships that demand far more than they give. If Hazel's journey has sparked a realization within you, or if you have ever had to make the agonizing choice to protect your own peace over keeping a toxic tradition alive, you are not alone. Please take a moment to subscribe and follow Calm Senior Stories. We share these narratives because recognizing our shared struggles is the very first step toward genuine healing. As you turn off your screen and step back into the rhythm of your own life, take a long, honest look at the people you allow into your inner circle. Think about the empty chairs at your holiday table, the ones you perhaps used to look at with a sudden pang of guilt or sorrow. Maybe those empty spaces aren't a tragedy at all. Perhaps they are the very architecture of your survival. Sometimes the most beautiful life-saving thing you can build is a locked door. And as the quiet settles in your own home tonight, you must ask yourself, who holds